uh, Virgo. Something is already in motion, not approaching from a distance, not gathering somewhere on the horizon waiting for permission to move closer, already in motion, already inside the current of your life, reshaping things at a level below the visible, rearranging what is coming before it has announced itself. And the reason I need you to hear that first, before anything else, before the explanation, before the unpacking of what I am feeling and why, is because there is a difference between waiting for something to begin and recognizing that it has already begun. One keeps you passive, the other asks something of you. And what is moving in your life right now is asking something of you. Think about the last few weeks, not the surface of them, not the appointments and the tasks and the conversations that filled the hours, but the texture beneath all of that, the quality of something that has been different, harder to name than a feeling, more specific than a mood, a kind of hum, the particular atmospheric pressure that precedes significant weather, not the storm itself, but the way the air changes before it, the way the birds go quiet, the way the light acquires a quality that is neither ordinary nor alarming, but unmistakably distinctly charged. You have been living inside that atmospheric change, and the charge in it is not random. It is directional. It is pointing somewhere. And where it is pointing is toward a reconfiguration of your life so fundamental that the person reading these words right now and the person who inhabits this life 6 months from today may be, in certain crucial respects, unrecognizable to each other. That is not a small thing to say. I know it is not a small thing to say, which is precisely why I am saying it, because small things do not require this kind of attention, and what is gathering around you right now is not small. It is the kind of thing that in the old symbolic traditions the readers would have marked with the most significant of all their symbols: the wheel, the world, the sun breaking over the horizon of a life that has been in a long and unexplained night. These are not symbols of minor adjustment. They are symbols of completion and beginning of one great cycle, exhaling its final breath while another draws its first. You are at that hinge point, the exhale and the inhale, the place in the rhythm of a life where what was becomes genuinely past and what will be becomes genuinely possible in a way it was not before. And the specific texture of your hinge point, the particular shape of the change that is forming around you, carries a quality I want to spend real time with tonight, because I think you deserve more than a vague promise of transformation. You deserve the attempt at precision, the honest reaching toward the specific nature of what this shift may hold. The first thing I feel is release, not the small daily release of tension that comes with the end of a difficult week, the structural kind. The release of something that has been load bearing in your life, something you have been organized around, something that has shaped your choices and your identity and your sense of what is available to you, that is finally, after a long time of being necessary, becoming unnecessary, the scaffolding coming down. And scaffolding, when it comes down around a building that is finally complete, does not diminish what stands behind it. It reveals it, shows the structure in its finished form, unobstructed, for the first time. The removal of what was required during construction is not a loss. It is the moment the thing becomes itself. Something in your life is becoming itself, is stepping out from behind the scaffolding of everything that was required to get it here, and the sight of it, your life without the temporary structures, Your life in its more finished form may genuinely surprise you with how much was being built beneath the difficulty, that the difficulty made it impossible to fully see. For some of you, this release is professional, a chapter of work of effort poured into something that has not yet returned what it promised, of talent applied in contexts that did not fully recognize it, of potential constrained by circumstances that always felt more temporary than they turned out to be, may be ending in a way that opens into something genuinely different, not a minor upgrade to the current situation, a departure from its fundamental terms, a move into a context where what you bring to your work is met with a quality of recognition and a quality of reward that the previous context was simply not structured to provide. The change in conditions may feel, when it arrives, less like an opportunity seized and more like a correction, the world finally adjusting to a truth about your value that the world had been slow to catch up to. For others, the release is relational, a dynamic with a person or a pattern of relating that has expressed itself across multiple people over time, that has been quietly, persistently costing you more than it returns, may be approaching its natural conclusion, not dramatically, not with the noise and wreckage of a forced ending, but with the particular grace of something that has simply run its course, that has taught what it came to teach, given what it came to give, and is now moving toward its close with the unhurried inevitability of a tide going out. And in the space left by its going, something is already waiting, something that carries a different quality, quieter, perhaps, but more nourishing, less electric, perhaps, but more sustaining. The kind of connection that does not require management, that does not leave you depleted at the edges, that simply, and this simplicity, after what you have been through, may feel almost radical, gives back in proportion to what it receives. And for others still, what is shifting is something more internal than either of these, a fundamental revision in the story you have been telling yourself about who you are and what your life is allowed to contain. Because we all carry a story, a narrative about our own limits, our own ceiling, our own particular place in the hierarchy of who gets to have what. And most of the time, this story operates below conscious awareness, shapes our choices without our realizing it is doing so, closes doors before we have even reached for the handle, edits our aspirations down to a size that feels safe because it feels achievable. The story is not malicious. It was built from experience, from the accumulated evidence of what has and has not worked, from the lessons learned in the school of genuine difficulty, but it is also in ways that are only visible from the outside or from a moment of genuine reckoning, a cage, a comfortable, familiar, internally consistent cage, but a cage nonetheless. The door of that cage may be opening, not because someone else opened it, because something in you has finally, quietly grown too large for the dimensions of the story, has pressed against its walls long enough that the walls are beginning to give, has accumulated enough evidence of its own capacity through everything survived, everything built, everything endured without collapsing to challenge the story's central premise, which is that you are the size the story says you are. You are not. You have never been. And the change that is forming in the atmosphere of your life right now may be, at its deepest level, simply the external world beginning to reflect a truth about your actual dimensions that the internal story has long been obscuring. I want to speak about timing because I feel it in the reading, and I think it is one of the most important things to understand about what is happening. The timing of what is coming is not arbitrary. It is not the universe distributing events according to a schedule that has nothing to do with you. The timing is responsive. It is responding to something that has been happening inside you, a readiness that has been building, a maturation that has been occurring, a quiet but cumulative shift in your internal relationship to yourself and to what you believe you deserve. That shift has been happening for longer than you may realize. And what I am feeling tonight is that it may have crossed a threshold, arrived at a point of sufficient completion that the external world, which is always slower to respond than the internal world is to change, is beginning to catch up. The external world catching up to an internal shift is what a life change actually feels like from the inside, not a visitation from outside, not luck arriving from nowhere, but coherence, the outside and the inside finally coming into alignment, the life finally beginning to reflect the person rather than the outdated story the person used to tell about themselves. That coherence is what is forming. That alignment is what the coming weeks and months may begin to make visible in ways that the years before them did not. Pay attention to what presents itself in your path that feels different from the ordinary texture of your days. Different in quality, not necessarily in scale. The most consequential moments do not always arrive in obviously consequential packaging. A conversation that begins ordinarily and goes somewhere unexpected. An offer that comes from a direction you were not monitoring. A realization arriving in a quiet moment that reframes something you had understood one way and suddenly cannot understand that way anymore. These are not random events. They are the first visible evidence of the rearrangement that has already been happening beneath the surface, the scaffolding beginning to come down, the structure beginning to show itself, the life beginning to step into a form that is more fully its own. There is also something I want to say about fear, because I feel it present in your energy alongside the anticipation, a shadow that moves with the light rather than against it. The fear that this will not last, that it is not real, that the pattern will repeat, and what looks like genuine change will turn out to be another version of the same story wearing a different costume. That fear is understandable. It was earned in the specific circumstances of your specific life, and I will not dismiss it as simply a failure of faith. But I want to offer you a distinction that I think matters. The fear of repetition is appropriate when the internal conditions that generated the previous pattern are unchanged. When those conditions have changed, when the story has been revised, when the readiness is genuine, when the person receiving the new circumstances is substantively different from the person who received the previous ones, the fear of repetition is working from outdated information. It is protecting against a past that is no longer the present. You are not the same person who entered this difficult stretch. The change in you is real, even on the days when it is invisible to you, even on the days when the familiar heaviness returns and the old story reasserts itself with its practiced confidence. Beneath those days, something has been building that those days cannot reach. Something that has been quietly, stubbornly, irrevocably becoming, and that is now close enough to its completed form that the world is beginning to notice it before you have fully noticed it yourself. The life that is coming towards you is not a gift dispensed from outside. It is a homecoming, the arrival, finally, at a version of your existence that has always been available to the person you actually are, that was simply waiting for the person you actually are to become fully available to it. That waiting is drawing to a close. The distance between where you are and where you are going is collapsing with a speed that may genuinely surprise you. Let it. Let it surprise you. Let it arrive in whatever form it chooses, through whatever door it finds, on whatever morning you least expect it, and when it does, when the change that has been forming in the invisible reaches of your life finally becomes undeniably, beautifully visible, receive it as what it is. Not luck, not accident, not something that happened to you from outside. The natural, earned, long-awaited arrival of a life that was always yours, finally finding its way home. If this reached you at the exact moment it was meant to stay close, subscribe and come back. Because what is opening up in your story deserves to be witnessed all the way through. And the best of it is only just beginning to show itself.